Democratic strategist, now trying to tamp down the uproar she ignited by slagging Ann Romney, Mitt Romney's wife, for being a stay-at-home mom. But the political firefight over just who's waging a war on women is only heating up. Joining me now, Republican Congresswoman Nan Hayworth from New York, who's a Romney supporter, and Kirsten Powers, Daily Beast columnist and a Fox News contributor, who has written a lot about the war on women. Welcome to you both. Great to have both of you here.
Good to be here.
Guys, I want to start with this, with Hillary Rosen's comment so people know what we're talking about. Here's Hillary Rosen from CNN last night.
What you have is Mitt Romney running around the country saying, well, you know, my wife tells me that what women really care about are economic issues. And when I listen to my wife, that's what I'm hearing. Guess what? His wife has actually never worked a day in her life. She's never really dealt with the kinds of economic issues that a majority of the women in this country are facing.
All right, so there you have it. She's never worked a day in her life. Kirsten, what do you say?
Well, obviously, you know, now Hillary Rosen has done a follow-up to this. She wrote something for the Huffington Post, and she was saying she actually has respect for stay-at-home moms. But when you say a person has never worked a day in their life, that sort of suggests that you don't really think what they're doing is work. So I think that is certainly a major problem, and I think that people are understandably upset because they don't feel like it's just an attack on Ann Romney. They feel that it's an attack on all stay-at-home mothers, and I think that's why it's probably become such a big issue.
And to that point, Ann Romney, she responded on Twitter. It's her first tweet ever. She said, I made a choice to stay home and raise 5 boys. Believe me, it was hard work. She now has 22,000 followers, by the way, the quickest uptick in a Twitter following I think I've ever seen. Congresswoman, to you, how do you get away with saying that raising kids is not work?
I've raised 2 sons, and I've had a career as a physician and now a career in Congress. And I can tell you that the most challenging times in my life had to do with caring for my family, the most rewarding as well. But, you know, they've even assigned economic value. I mean, they've actually put dollar equivalents on women's work in the home, or any parent's work in the home, to the tune of upwards of $75,000 a year. It has real economic value as well as real value within our culture that has to be honored, and it is real work. And that phrasing, I agree with Kirsten, it is just over the top in terms of disrespecting.
Right, over the top. And I got to tell you, I think some of us working women, we work so that we, you know, it's easier to be at work sometimes than it is to be at home, right? I mean, but women know that.
Yes, it is.
You know, we have a little bit of breaking news on this story. The president weighing in. I want to read to you what he had to say. An interesting response here just this afternoon from the president, who kind of sides with you guys here. He says there is no tougher job than being a mom. I think this was an ill-advised statement by someone on television, which sort of raises the question, who is Hillary Rosen anyway? Well, she's a former lobbyist. And there's also great debate about whether she's actually working for the president, for the White House, for the DNC. What do you say to this whole issue? Kirsten?
Well, she's somebody who I think is plugged in the Democratic Party, and she's sort of a Washington power player. I don't think she has a formal role on the campaign that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure she was a Hillary Clinton supporter, actually. So she doesn't speak for the White House on this. However, I think it's good that the president said what he said. And you know, it's interesting because Hillary is a liberal, and feminists have long argued that unpaid work by women is something that's devalued by our society. And so I think to talk about it this way is problematic. The other thing I'd like to say is, if Ann Romney isn't qualified to talk about women's issues, why was Elizabeth Edwards? You know, it's like the idea that, you know, you come from a wealthy family, so therefore you can't connect with women who can't put food on their table, and yet Elizabeth Edwards was allowed to opine on all sorts of things while she was building her, 30,000-foot home. So I think there's a real double standard here.
Well, I want to actually play some sound from Ann Romney so you can hear from the woman directly and respond. Here's Ann Romney.
I want to tell you what women are telling me, and Hillary needs to know this because I've been on the campaign trail for 1 year, and guess what women are talking about? And I don't care if they're stay-at-home moms or they're working mothers or they're grandmothers. Guess what they're all talking about? They're talking about jobs, and they're talking about the legacy of debt that we're leaving our children. That's what I'm hearing, and that's what we're talking about here.
This was from earlier on FNC. Congresswoman, she was not happy with this, and you could almost visibly see her anger about this whole debate. What did you make of her response? You're a Romney supporter.
Well, I am a Romney supporter, and I agree with Ann Romney. The women whom I'm privileged to represent talk with me about their concerns about putting food on the table, being able to take care of the necessities for their family, being able to fill their gas tanks. These are real issues that span every socioeconomic level in our country, and they need to be addressed, and Governor Romney is addressing them. We need an effective fiscal policy.
Right.
We need a federal government that doesn't weigh down the economy like a stone.
Okay, there's another issue I want to get to here, and it's a comparison. Interesting what the president said today. He may know he's vulnerable. Here's why. There is a gender pay gap in the White House. Men make on average $70,000. Women make $60,000. Ron Suskind's book on confidence men, a lot of the women inside the White House working with the president saying that their comments aren't taken all that seriously, aren't taken as seriously as the men's. Kirsten, to you first. Does the president have trouble with us?
Well, I think that that's all really problematic, just as a general issue. But I don't think it's problematic politically for him, because women tend to vote Democratic, and right now the president has about a 20-point. He's winning them by about 20 points right now. So I don't think stuff that happens internally in the White House is going to be a problem for him politically. But it's just a problem in general. And look, I worked in the Clinton White House, and there were similar complaints about that White House. Dee Dee Myers probably was the most vocal about it and most public about it. So, those are issues that have to be addressed.
Congresswoman, is it just an issue of the White House, or is there something about this president that doesn't understand women's issues?
Well, I think this is a highly ideological administration in so many ways. And, there has to be a real live policy that works for all Americans behind all the rhetoric. And our problem is that we know that the policies that this administration has espoused have damaged our economy. They have resulted in greater job losses for women than for men. Women have been very hard hit by this economy, if not disproportionately so. They have to take that seriously. And I think it smacks of hypocrisy in a very worrying way that in our own White House, women are paid less than men, and yet they like to assail Republicans for somehow being elitist. I mean, that is elitism at its worst, and hypocrisy, and it needs to stop.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Kirsten and Congresswoman Hayworth, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
It's been a fascinating